Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to show how you can edit the skeleton of a skeletal mesh asset so you can add functionality. Like in this F-18, it's a free asset from Fab, but not everything in the aircraft that is articulated in the real world is set up with joints in the Unreal Engine skeletal mesh. So we're going to take a look at how we can add the joints that are needed and then animate that new functionality. Okay, so I'm going to start with a new blank project and go into Fab. The Fab plugin is installed here in Unreal Engine 5.4, and in my search I'm going to type in F/A-18 and the word Hornet, and that should bring us, there it is right here, the FA-18C Hornet West. And this is no cost on Fab, so you can go ahead and add that to your library. And then I'm just going to use add to project here, and the latest version available is 4.2.7, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to project. And there we go. We've got a folder for Vigilante content, Vigilante being the company that made this for us. And if I go into Vigilante and then Vehicles and West Fighter, here we have our skeletal mesh. Now, the thing about this is that some of the features of the model aren't rigged within the skeleton. So if I go to the skeleton, for example, here, and character and bones, and let's show the whole hierarchy, Alt right mouse clicked and pull the mouse towards me to zoom in here, we see lots of joints here, right? And so each one of these allows us to adjust, different control surfaces and features of the aircraft. So there's some flaps over there. I think we've got, let's see here, there should be a joint for some ailerons and flaps that are, okay, here's another flap, and then Control Z undo. You get the idea, right? So here's a rudder. So we can adjust some of these things, but the animation that I'm going to be working on is involving a carrier launch, the various things that take place around the aircraft before it is launched off a catapult. And one of those things is that this bar gets lowered. Another thing is that usually these aircraft have their wings folded up when they're not getting ready for flight, so that there's less space taken up by them. And this model doesn't have a joint for folding the wings, and also it doesn't have a joint for lowering the launch bar. So that's going to be my example here for editing this skeletal mesh skeleton so that I can rig additional aspects of the model. Now, just as a quick note, if I go ahead and I look at the end of the wing and I switch from lit mode to wireframe, if I look really close in here, I can see that the geometry right in here is indeed doubled up. So I should actually have geometry on the inside of this wing from the model once it's folded up. So I shouldn't need to add anything in terms of geometry or textures. It looks like it's already there. And so I can go back to lit, and all we want to do is work on a copy of this model. We wouldn't want to alter the original in case something we do doesn't go right. So I'm going to close this window for now, and I'm going to select this fighter and Control D to duplicate the asset in the content browser, and I'll just call this underscore folding and Control S. And the work we're going to do involves altering the skeleton itself. So I'm also going to go to the skeleton, Control D, duplicate that, and again I'm going to add underscore folding to this. The one after the C was automatically added. I don't need that there. And F2, I don't need that one after the letter C here either. Okay, so now I've got a new skeleton and I've got a new fighter. The only thing is that I want to assign this skeleton to this fighter so that I don't accidentally edit the skeleton that goes with this fighter. So let's see, right click. Can I assign skeleton? There we go. Let's select this and make sure that I've got the one that I'm interested in. And I'm going to accept that. We're going to copy everything. That should line up perfectly, and Control S to save that. So now if I double click my folding version of the model and then I click on skeleton, then we are all good with that. One note is I don't have any animations, whereas I did have animations for the previous model. So while I'm at this, what I'm going to do is add a compatible skeleton, and that will be the previous version of that. And now we've got animations to look at. So wonderful. Control Shift S to save all of our changes. And in order to be able to edit this skeleton, I do have a plugin activated, and that is Skeletal Mesh Editing. So if I go to the edit menu and choose plugins and I type in there we are, Skeletal Mesh Editing Tools, I need that activated. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this and say yes, because it's a beta, and restart, and we'll return to the recording in just a sec. Okay, we're back, so I can close our plugins panel, and we should be good to go. Now that we had that Skeletal Mesh Editing plugin activated, if I double click on my folding fighter, now we have this new editing tools button, and if we toggle it on and off, we have a set of editing tools here. So the first thing to adjust is the easiest, and that is going to be this launch bar here. So I'm going to go to Edit Skeleton, and then use the Edit Skeleton button, and just again Alt right mouse click and dragging the mouse towards me to zoom in, Alt and left mouse button to rotate around. So here's the launch bar that I want to edit, and I want to add a joint after this joint, whatever that is. Okay, so this is front chassis rotate joint. All right, so I want a new joint essentially from this view to the right of that. What I'm going to do is switch from perspective view to left view, and with that joint selected, I'm zooming right into that. Again, I'm going to use my right mouse button, click no altering keys to kind of move about. All right, so I'm viewing from the other side versus where I came from, so I'm going to switch this to the right view, and there we go. So here's the launch bar, and I'm going to want to place a new joint right about here. So I'm going to choose Add for adding joint. I'm going to keep it being within the mesh. Again, I've got this front chassis rotate joint selected, so that when I click in here, it should add a joint, and it should be a child of this one. So I'll just click right about here. And oh, what do you know? It worked. Okay, so we have a joint. I'm going to F2 on the joint in here in the outliner and call it LF underscore chassis and launch bar. Oh, let's see. Front. There we go. Not LF. So interesting how this is LF wheel joint, but in fact this is front. That's interesting. So let's do front underscore chassis underscore launch bar. Okay, so now I have a joint to drive the launch bar. Let's take a good look at this, though, where that got placed. So I'm going to switch from my right view back to my perspective. And if I zoom out here, we've got the joint ended up in this block, but I want it over here. And here we can see that these are the relative location offsets from the parent joint. So left to right is here, the y-axis in this case. So I'm just going to set that to 0. And now the joint is in alignment with the original, its parent joint. And so I think we're in a pretty good spot right here. I am happy with this placement, so I will accept that. Okay, so now we've added this joint, and if I select it though and rotate, nothing happens, and that is because we haven't weighted any of the vertices or faces or anything like that to be moved by this joint. So that's where we go to Skin Weights, and we will edit the weights. And here we can see the geometry of the launch bar. Now, I could try to paint in here, but it gets a little kludgy, and more importantly, some of the vertices that I want are kind of buried in here. So I'm going to use the vertice mode in terms of how we're applying the weights. And here I'm going to drag select around these 4 vertices at the far end of the bar. And what's nice is with the edit selection here, I can click on grow, and then without having to hunt and find these vertices within the geometry, they are now selected. So now I've got all 8 vertices that define the shape of this launch bar. And now I can edit the weights for those. I'm going to basically replace the float amount of 1 for this selected joint, the front chassis launch bar. So if I replace, now the launch bar turns completely white, and I can accept this, and this means that the launch bar is now completely skinned to this joint. So now I can animate the launch bar, which I couldn't do before. All right, wonderful. Control Z to undo our positioning. We can still do this. Control Z to undo positioning. So that's great. Control Shift S to save all of my changes. So now I can work on the folding wings and do the same kind of thing. Now this is going to be a little more complicated because there are already joints in the wings here to, undo, be able to rotate various control surfaces on the far end of this wing, and I want these joints to follow along when we fold. So we'll be doing some reparenting when we create this joint. So I'll go back to edit skeleton mode, and I'm going to zoom in on this wing here. Undo, I don't want to be editing this one. In fact, what I want to do is select the center of gravity joint, which is the parent of all of these, and I will add. Now this time, instead of being within the mesh, what I want to do is actually position this joint on this front surface so that we fold up from the top of the wing rather than from within it. So I'm going to change from within mesh to on mesh, and try to line this up and add. So I am going to click right here on this seam and tap F to frame that up. All right, pretty good. Now I can see inside here we have our alignment of this joint, and so I'm going to increase the size of that, the axis length. I'm going to change that from 1 to 10, and now this is much easier to see the axes for this joint. So it looks like it's kind of on the surface. So I am going to move that out a little bit more, and maybe a little bit down. And then I want to align the axes of this joint, particularly this x-axis. I want that to be aligned with the seam in the geometry. So I'm just going to use a rotate here in the z-axis a little bit to line that up, and maybe we'll push out a little bit more. There we go. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that positioning. Now I want to mirror this to be on the other side as well. So I will give this a name before I do that. And it looks like everything that's on, this is the left side of the aircraft. So I will call this LF underscore, I will call this outer and fold, underscore fold. Okay, and there is a setting with this selected. I believe I can mirror. Let's try edit. Yep, there we go. In edit mode, I can mirror this. So let's select our options. Now I want to mirror across on the y-axis. So I will choose the y-axis because red is the x-axis. That'll mirror forward. Green is the y-axis, since that will mirror across the aircraft. I don't want to mirror children because these children will already be there on the other side. And the left string is LF underscore, and the right string will be RT underscore. Let's see if that works. We'll mirror that. And let's scroll here, and sure enough, well, it tried, but it didn't do the naming correctly. So I'll go ahead and select my mirrored bone, tap F to frame that up. Sure enough, it is out here. The nice thing about that mirror function, by the way, notice that the positive x-axis for this is facing in the other direction. It's going to be really handy when we animate, because rotating negative direction around that axis is going to fold up the wing. And so the negative axis in this wing will fold clockwise from this front view. And that negative axis with the other joint, if I select that and F to frame that up, that negative rotation on this side will rotate counterclockwise from this point of view. So that way we could select both of these joints, rotate in a negative direction, and that should fold up the wings. Okay, so selecting this mirrored joint, I'm just going to F2 and call that RT underscore outer underscore fold. Enter. Okay, so now I need to parent these joints. So let's filter this. I'm going to start with the left joints, so LF, and then space outer, and this should give us just the outer joints. So that is our newly created joint plus these 3 joints that existed before. So I think I can shift select these 3 joints and then click and drag. Nope, I can't drag them all at once, so I'll just need to click and drag each one after another. Now they're all children of that new outer joint. Their rotational axes should have been preserved. So now instead of LF outer, I'm going to search for RT outer, and let's select that and type F to frame that up and zoom out. And then one at a time, I will parent each of these to that joint. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to accept the changes that I've made to my skeleton, and maybe I'll do Control-Shift-S to save everything in the project. And now I want to make sure that I apply the skin weights to the vertices like I did with the launch bar, but there is a little bit of a complication. I want to be careful not to skin anything to this joint that needs to be skinned to these other joints for the control surfaces. So as a little test, what I'm going to do is select my new outer fold and fold that up. And so since I've folded this up now 90 degrees, it moved the child joints with it, and so the control surfaces followed, but the geometry that is still skinned to the center of gravity stayed put. And so all of these vertices we want to skin to our folding joint. So we'll go to the skinning tools, edit weights. We're still in vertice mode, so I can click drag and select all of this. And again, like with the launch bar, there's a lot of overlap in these vertices, but since I've selected all of these, I should be able to hit grow, and sure enough, we select the next round of vertices that are adjacent or attached to vertices that we had selected. And so that should get us the entire outer wing. And so I can go ahead and replace my weighting, and that's good. Looks like we left behind a little bit of a control surface actuator cover. So we want to select those, and we want to be careful not to select anything else. So I'm trying to find a good perspective on this. So actually what I might do is just find this perspective, select all of these, and let's use grow. All right, so that should capture all of that geometry and replace that. And wonderful, so there's nothing left. Oh, there is just this little U of vertices. So let's get in there and select all of those and make sure we leave no vertex behind is our motto. In skin weighting, that should do it. Let's replace those. Okay, they follow. All right, wonderful. So we just need to do this on the other side. So let's go ahead and accept what we just did and select our other joint and fold that up, and we'll just do that same exact process. Edit weights, and we'll drag select all of these, and we'll grow, and we have our outer fold selected, so we can go ahead and replace that weighting, and then we should be left just with that actuator cover. And so we will go ahead and select those joints. Maybe a drag select. Just don't want to accidentally select anything here. I think I got it. All right, wonderful. So replace those weights, and wonderful. We got everything in one shot that time, except. And finally, we can rotate these joints back to their original positions. So that's that outer fold, and search for the word fold and select the right F to frame that up, and bring that down another 90 degrees. And so there we go. We've got all of our adjustments to this ready. And and just as a note, sure enough, that geometry, F to frame that up, that geometry here is indeed closed. We have geometry inside the wing, so nothing needed to be done there. Control Z undo, so we have everything back to where we want. Control Shift S to save that. And then finally, just to show how we can use that in animation, I'll close all of this and drag out my folding fighter. And maybe I'll face that to us, so I'll rotate it 180 degrees. And then we'll add a sequence, right click, cinematics, level sequence, and folding, test, SEQ, Control S to save, double click to open. Fighter is selected, so we can add actor to sequencer. There's the fighter. we do not need the animations. However, if I hit add, sure enough, we still have access to the animations for the original skeleton because of adding the compatibility. That's nice. I'm going to delete that animation and instead add a control rig. So I'm going to add control rig, and I'm going to choose control rig classes FK control rig. So the FK control rig, forward kinematics rig, allows us to animate any of the existing joints in sequencer. So I can go ahead and look for our fold, for example, here in our anim outliner, select these two, tap S in our sequencer, set a keyframe for that. Let's make sure auto key is activated, and I might as well find my launch bar as well. There's that launch bar, and I should be able to hopefully find that in there. Yep, okay. And again, S to set a key for that, and then at the end of the animation, I will go ahead and lower the launch bar, and we have auto key, so that keyed, and let's go back to our fold and select these. And again, since both of them are selected, I should be able to rotate negatively. I'm in world mode. So if I'm in world mode and I do this rotation, that's a pretty funny dance that the actual F18 cannot do. But if I change this to object mode, now it's going to rotate in the axis space of the actual joints. So when I rotate one negatively, they both rotate up. And there is our folded wings. We set auto keys. So now I can just scrub through this animation, and we're lowering the launch bar and folding the wings. All right, that is all I had to show in this. I hope this helped. Until next time, have fun.